Hi everyone, it's James here. Welcome to another video on the channel Squeeze Fan TV. Thanks for joining me. Thanks to everybody who has been watching and commenting and liking and subscribing, all the good stuff. So today's video is a topic which I totally love, and it's just one that I've thought about for so many years. Squeeze songs that Chris Difford should have sung. Now, I'm going to make a little qualifying remark here and say should have sung, could have sung, because there are some of these songs where I really love Glenn's vocal performance, and I think it would be a shame to not have that performance. So there are one or two of them that I think he should have sung, but there are a few that he could have sung, and I would have loved it if he had have done. But by the same token, it would have been a shame had we not had the Glenn version. Anyway. In my opinion, Chris's voice is, it has a more earthy quality, a bit more of a Jack the Lad kind of quality, that great performance in Cool for Cats. He was never that keen on his own voice. I think he could sing better than he ever revealed. It was only in later years that he sort of unveiled this other singing voice that he'd always had, I think. The soft voice which he used finally on East Side Story and Sweet Summer Stranger. He'd had that voice from years before. But I think in Squeeze, he just felt like he had to sing in this gruff frog throat kind of voice because it was a nice contrast to Glenn. But Chris never really liked his own voice, didn't feel very confident around Glenn, and preferred Glenn to take the lead vocal. So even though, Cool for Cats is one of the biggest ever songs they ever had, it wasn't Chris's voice which went on to sing any more of the songs, I don't think, on the Squeeze 45s and Under compilation. I think that's the only one, isn't it? Of course, he did the dual vocals with Glenn an awful lot, and that shouldn't be overlooked. But I think it's a shame that Chris didn't sing some of these songs. The ones I've picked, I guess, are the more kind of earthy ones, the ones that might lend themselves more to a sort of Jack the Lad kind of approach. Also, a couple of these are songs which I think were quite personal lyrics to Chris. And I think it's a shame that there are some of those songs where clearly he was writing about himself, and yet he allowed Glenn to sing them. In a way, that's a bit of a shame. Anyway, let me know what your choices are and what you think of mine. So we'll go through these in chronological order. Just going to do tracks from the albums, not going to do B-sides or anything like that. So the first one from the first Squeeze album, Squeeze, I think it would have been a good idea actually if Chris had taken the lead vocal on First Thing Wrong, which is a bit of a pub rock, sleazy kind of boozy kind of song. I think Glenn does okay on it, but I think it would have suited Chris's voice better. So yeah, I would say that's one that Chris should have sung, in my opinion. From the Cool for Cats album, when I was growing up, I was always convinced that Chris did sing this song. It was only years later before I listened to it properly and realised that it was actually Glenn. But the song It's Not Cricket from side one of Cool for Cats was just made for Chris, really, wasn't it? I mean, Glenn actually sings it in that kind of Cockney voice or Mockney voice, but it's sort of the son of Cool for Cats on this record, really. It has that bawdy, earthy kind of humour, references to people having their trousers pulled down in pub car parks and that kind of thing. I think Chris would have done a good job of that song, and I think it would have been better if he had sung it. So those first two ones, in my opinion, they are two songs that Chris should have sung. Skip an album, Argy Bargy, he only has one lead vocal on that record. He has Here Comes That Feeling, and then he also sings one verse, doesn't he, of I Think I'm Go Go, but I'm happy with that. I can't think of any other songs on that record that I think Chris should have sung. On East Side Story, on the other hand, I think it would have been really nice if he tried his hand at the last track, actually, Messed Around. Again, that one's got a bit of an earthy feel to it, a bit of a rock and roll kind of, I don't know, it just seems more like a Chris song than a Glenn song, and I can really imagine his voice on that one. So yeah, I'll go with Messed Around on that. And now we're going to jump ahead quite a few albums from Babylon and On. Now, what song did I have from this? Oh yeah, right, okay. So I think there are some songs by Squeeze which are maybe not great songs, and I don't want to suggest that Chris should have sung the crap songs, but I think sometimes with some Squeeze songs that are maybe a little bit bland, It's not because Glenn sings them that they're bland, but I think if Chris had sung some of them, it would have maybe given them a little bit more character and just lifted them a little bit. From this record, I think Trust Me to Open My Mouth, the first song on side 2, I think would have worked really well as a Chris song. It's not my favourite Squeeze song by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's quite a contrived song. It's a bit of a comedy song, really, and maybe what I'm thinking is that Chris was maybe good at bringing out the comedy or the humour in songs, so I think that would have been quite good fun if he'd taken that one, Trust Me to Open My Mouth. I need to backtrack actually. I've skipped ahead of myself. I wanted to include the Difford and Tilbrook album, an album where he doesn't have any songs at all. He has no lead vocals on Difford and Tilbrook, which is a great shame, I think. Having said that, I do think that Glenn is in tremendous vocal form on the Difford and Tilbrook album. I think he does some of the greatest singing of his career, really. Again, a bit like that last one, I'm going to go with what I consider to be a sort of comedy song on this. I think Wagon Train would have sounded great with Chris on vocals. I think, to me, that's the obvious song on this record. I think you needed Glenn to sing the more emotionally sophisticated songs, things like Love's Crashing Waves, Picking Up the Pieces. But I think Chris could have done a good job with Wagon Train. I think that would have been fun to hear. So there we go. We just came out of order a little bit there. So we're going to go to 1989 and Frank. Chris actually has a couple of really good songs on this, doesn't he? He has Slaughter, Gutted and Heartbroken, which is a classic Chris Difford lead vocal. And then he has an absolutely brilliant lead vocal on side 2 with Love Circles. But the one I thought we'd go for on this actually, and this might be a bit controversial, but I think he could have done a damn fine job of the single, If It's Love. I do think Glenn does a good job on it, but again, it's one of those slightly more comedy songs, got a bit of humour going on in the lyrics, and it's a song that I very much associate with Chris's lyrical style. I know the original first draft of the song was If I'm Dead, and he had to change it to If It's Love, because I don't think Glenn liked the vocal very much. But again, it's got that kind of humorous quality to it, and I think it would have been a nice surprise to hear Chris doing that right at the start of the album, If It's Love. I think that would have been quite good fun. I do like Glenn's version. Play, another album where Chris didn't have any lead vocals. I say another album, this is the first one, I think. This is the first Squeeze album where Chris didn't have a lead vocal. That's right. So which song am I going to go for on this? I think there's an obvious one. I think Chris should have sung Gone to the Dogs on side 2. I just think his voice would have suited it better than Glenn's. It was the obvious choice. This album's got quite a lot of emotionally complex stuff on it. I can't really hear him singing stuff like, The Day I Get Home or The Truth. If he'd used his nice soft voice, which he now uses on his solo albums, I could hear him doing a good version of Walk a Straight Line, actually. But as far as the bullfrog croak Difford voice goes, I think Gone to the Dogs would have been a tremendous lead vocal for him to take. The next album on from that, Some Fantastic Place, again an album where Chris did not take a lead vocal. Not quite sure what was happening around about this time, why he'd stopped even taking, a token song as the lead. To me, there's an obvious choice with this album. I think Chris would have done a damn fine job of the song Talk to Him, which I kind of see as being quite autobiographical. I'm not sure if it is or not, but that lyric certainly seems to have... It's got that kind of underdog quality to it, that self-deprecatory thing. Chris he's the sort of eternal man in his shell, isn't he? Struggling to come out of his shell. And I think Talk to Him would have worked really nicely as a Chris lead vocal. Great album. I do think it misses Chris's voice. From Ridiculous, and again, I suppose this again is a sort of comedy song, and it's one which totally sums up Chris, really. Can you guess which one I'm going to go for? On side 1 of the vinyl, what would be the vinyl? I will go with Grouch of the Day. I think Chris does the lead, he does the twin lead vocals with Glenn on that. But I think that was quite an obvious choice, really, for Chris to have sung lead. Anyway, those are my choices. I think there's 10. Maybe there's 11. I think there's 10. Can't count. So let me know what you think. Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you have any other suggestions? Please do leave a comment below. Let me know. Squeeze songs that Chris Difford should have, could have sung. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you in the next video.